It's great to see you again, and I'm feeling very grateful that we can have these conversations, even if we did not meet for I don't know how many months. It's I think more than a year since we could last connect face to face in real environments, not in an online virtual environment.
Yeah, the whole year cycle already.
Yeah. And as you were mentioning cycles, and we have already done a podcast about life cycles
Yeah.
and how life unfolds in a rhythm. Maybe we can discuss today about these rhythms of life that are pulsating, and also how death may be part of this process at some point, and how it can give more meaning to life itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like not a happy topic, but I do find it actually a very core human topic, core human question. Interesting enough, in August last year, I was with my teacher, Maria Gamori, and we touched upon the most existential questions. And one of them is meaning and meaningless, or form, formless, and life and death. And so we for some reason had this new idea that we wanted to talk about these very core existential human questions. And I chose with my group the form and the formless, which is also implicit the life and death questions. And it's something that's very present to me right now, as my one of my very, very, very dear friends is going through the process of having had to say goodbye to her mother during this time. And so life and death is not just a metaphor right now, but it's a real experience where I'm accompanying a friend who has this question: what is the best way to say goodbye? And the challenge here is there's a lot of battle in the family, so it wasn't possible for her actually to be present in the dying process. And that was something she actually really wanted. She wanted to, be still in the presence of sharing what needs to be said, receiving what needs to be received, and then having this accompanying process by letting the other person go and say, now it's time for you to let it be, let it go, and just, leave your earth body and transcend into whatever other space. They have Mexican roots. So there's also the belief in the Mexican tradition that actually, which I love, when I see her decoration, she always has a lot of happy skeletons. And I don't know if you know the movie Coco, if you've seen that, the Disney movie Coco, and it's about the Mexican tradition that, you really celebrate death in that tradition. And so it's an essential part of life. And it's basically the idea that when we keep the dying people in our heart and in our mind and in our memories, that we cross that bridge between those two worlds, and we're actually having a connection and an exchange with them. We actually have these, ways of communicating. And it's only if the people in the present world, in the life, are stopping to think about the dying people, that's when they completely leave and they become invisible. And I love that idea that there's a bridge that connects the two worlds. And as long as somebody is heartfelt thinking of you and keeping your memory of your existence and how you touch people, that we just stay alive, you know, infinite long. And I strongly believe that. I guess the other point I want to make is I feel that in the face of dying and, you know, being threatened right now, confronted with a potential death possibility by the disease, and being confronted with so many images that are basically always informing us to that possibility, there's also a really great possibility for all of us to learn what it means to live a life fully as we're confronted with the possibility of dying, with our limit, with our limitation. I think, and the absence of something, or the potential absence of something, that's where we learn the most valuable lessons about what it means to the value itself. So in the face of death, I probably learned the most about life itself and what life means in terms of being alive and not just to survive. And I've been really meditating on those questions myself.
Mm. That's a very insightful and very interesting statement. That the closer we feel to the presence of death, the more we can learn about life. So we can feel more alive by having this closeness to the idea of death. And um, I would invite you to share with us your insights about the relevance that life has for an individual, like his or her own life confronted with an illness or with the proximity of death, and what it also means for those around the person, for the family, for the close friends, how this situation can affect both the individual itself and his meaning of life and of his or her own existence, but also the relationships with the closest people in their lives.
Yeah. You know, I want to borrow two insightful wisdom words that I got from two other sources too. There's a beautiful author called Bronnie Ware, and she wrote this book about the 5 regrets of the dying. And it's a book of her having had the experience of accompanying people in their dying process, and then having these extensive conversations with them about their life and about you know, this dying process right now, and that actually led her to collect the number 5 ideas of what people were regretting about not having lived. And I think about those regrets, you actually also then come to the counter side, which is what is worth really focusing our attention to as we really have the possibility. And the interesting thing was, people didn't say they want more money. People didn't say they want more power. People didn't say, oh, I regret I haven't worked enough. I should have worked just more, or something like that. You know, the things that we tend to focus our attention too much, or I wish that my neighbors would be very much envy me, you know, or I wish that my neighbors would talk more about my amazing vacation trips or something like that. Or I wish I had done more Facebook. The regrets were about having spent more times with friends, for example, you know, like really looking at what are the people that I call my dear close friends that can see all of me. And I wish I had spent more quality time with those quality relationships of people that I call my friends, and we share that honor with each other, which I think is a very precious good. There were things like, I wish I had given myself more time to really enjoy the things that I really enjoy doing. I wish I had focused my attention to stuff that I really love doing. I wish I had more danced. If dance is your passion, I wish I had, played the guitar, because I always loved music and I was working so much, but didn't give myself the time to play an instrument and really enjoy the music or something like that. So the interesting thing is the 5 regrets of the dying were things that were very simple, didn't have anything to do with money, didn't have anything to do with power influence, but a lot more to do with relationship to self, relationship to others, relationship to joy, relationship to what makes my heart sing, what makes myself happy. And I guess also what I implicitly heard is the relationship to actually notice the beauty that is right in front of us. I think we sometimes tend to focus on other things to be accomplished, that we're missing what's right in front of us, that's magical, beautiful, alive, vibrant, and making us happy. So I think it was also the idea, I wish I had be more present to what's already in my life and what's so beautiful about life. And I remember I was reading a script of Virginia Satir, and one of her students and friends, close friends, and wrote a script about the process of a conscious woman dying. And Virginia Satir had a very conscious way of dealing with her own death. She made that part of her life. And she realized, as she has lost the battle against cancer, because she was trying to look at a holistic approach about nutrition and resolving relationships and really take into heart everything that she holistically developed and educated people with. But what she realized also was that she never took vacation, she never took time off. She was always in service for something important and big, and that at some point she lost her battle against cancer. And as she realized that there was no other approach to take, she really began to surrender to that part of life, and which is the peace making with dying as an essential part of life itself. And she took a conscious decision in writing her friends that she really want them to celebrate all the shared moments and all the connections that they had. She wanted them to celebrate her life and not her absence. And she made a conscious decision to write a letter about this last moment and how to be remembered. And she also gave a symbol away to her friends of things that would be important to them. So she said, if there's something that you like to have from me as a memory, maybe a stone or something that I have as an object, please make sure you give it to me so that then I can give it to you. Which I love. I mean, I get goosebumps just saying it. I just love the idea that she could consciously say, give that to me so I know that you treasure this. And so I can feel that now in the living. And then I can give it to you. And when I have already departed, this is the thing that allows us to cross the bridge between those two worlds, to meet in this memory, heartfelt, space. And I believe that's important, that we find bridges to connect to people, even if they physically have departed, to stay connected to the jewels. But maybe also, the last point I want to make, also to complete the conversations that we need to have had, and maybe that we were not able to have in the living. Sometimes we wish to have certain conversations. Just because somebody departed doesn't mean we cannot have really, really good conversations with them when they're over the other side of the bridge. I believe maybe that we can have the best conversations then.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, because I know a lot of people that have lost dear members of the families or dear friends, and did not have the chance to go through these processes of completion and of clarifying and or making peace even with each other. So they gather a lot of regrets and a lot of frustration and anger and different kinds of negative feelings, just because they did not consider that they handled things appropriately.
Yeah.
And there was no resolution to that conflict or to that relationship. And a lot of times that causes a lot of even depression or anxiety. And yeah, I think that this perspective of being able to resolve some things that were not able to resolve at the time of the both were living, can be a way of making peace, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? There are two things that come to my mind. Virginia Satir developed a process called family reconstruction. And this actually gives an opportunity where you can have these friends or family members that maybe already died in the physical world be represented through a standing in, somebody who will represent the father again. And you can actually have a ritual exchange, like all the things that I wish I had said to you, all the things that I wish you had known about me. I sometimes call it the speak the unspeakable words, like whatever wasn't possible for whatever reason. You know, sometimes we were busy with life, things were hard, we were fearful of saying everything, but there are different ritual spaces that we could create in order to have those exchanges. And I was actually myself using this opportunity. I was with a peer group of colleagues, and I hosted that in my house some time ago. And my father-in-law had just died just a couple of days before I hosted it. So there was a question, will I want to host it or not? And I chose to. But I said, I need to incorporate his dying into our process. And what I used was, I was looking for a photo that would show him really happy and alive and vibrant. And, you know, he had a nice suntan. And our relationship had multiple strings, you know, there were good things, there were other things too. And I wasn't able to say goodbye to him. And because I separated also from my husband, it was also that we didn't have a lot of connection in the last years. And so I felt there was an open loop. And I used this opportunity to have somebody stand in as a representative for him and I had a photo that really represented him in a very nice way. So with the photo and this other person, I could then say things I would have liked to say to him. I could share my, you know, what I love about him, what I find really great about him, and what I wish I had said, but also things that I wasn't so happy about, but that I needed to clear the air to. And so we had this exchange, and it ended with how happy I am that I had the pleasure to meet him in my lifetime, and that he was part of my life, and that I want to celebrate that, and that I wish him farewell, and I wish he is in a really good space because he was suffering at the end. So I hope where he is, he doesn't have to suffer and he's in a good place. And then the other person who represented him had something really beautiful to say, and we could give each other a hug. And the funny thing that happened was that the photo that was placed on the floor, and there wasn't even a wind breezing, but for somehow, as we had this exchange, this photo blew away. It was in front of me. Out of a sudden, it kind of blew because I was on print, and then it moved towards the window to my outside, and it was almost like he's ready to go outside of that space. I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a really interesting moment. I said, well, I feel that his soul is kind of ready to go now. Everything that we had to say, we shared, and it was quite a beautiful moment. And I feel very much at peace and with him, you know.
That's a really intense experience, I can imagine. So yeah.
And beautiful.
And beautiful.
And life celebrating, and was, yes.
So that being put in such a frame, we can draw up the conclusion that life is not an ending or a final end, maybe, and we can relate to our dear ones that have passed also after this passage, in different ways, of course, but on a soul connection more than on any other way. So I thank you very much for your sharings today, and yeah, maybe sometime in our podcast we can also maybe emphasize how our lives can become more meaningful just by knowing that there's also a time for a passage
Yeah.
in other dimension through this gate that is commonly known as death.
Mm-hmm.